Welcome back, everyone. Next, we have Nova Minerals Limited, trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol NVA and on the ASX under the symbol NVA. It's a gold and critical minerals exploration and development company focused on advancing the Estelle Gold Project. Happy to welcome CEO and Executive Director, Chris Gerteisen. Chris, welcome to the conference. We're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thanks so much, Anna. We'll get straight into it. So Nova Minerals, we're developing North America's next major gold and critical minerals district. And the big critical mineral that we've been focused on is antimony. We're bringing domestic supply of antimony back to the U.S. here. A few disclaimers. So it's really about antimony and gold for us. On the antimony side, we've been the recent recipient of a $43.4 million Department of War award funding to bring that domestic production back, and we are on track, and we're targeting initial production by the end of 2026 or early 2027. So ahead of schedule, actually, on that. And with the gold, to date, very large project on the Australian JORC system, the global resource, 9.9 million ounces, but in the SK 1300 here in the United States, those in-pit economic resources, our previous study was 5.2 million ounces of in-pit resources, but we're working on a feasibility study now to come out with a new estimate on that on the gold side. So very excited for both, but we're really on the right commodities, at the right teams, in the right location here in Alaska, USA. The corporate overview, what's been happening. So recently, we've been working on a U.S. redomicile. So we are now a U.S. company, and the timeline there, we released the scheme booklet, had a shareholder vote on the scheme that was approved, and then the courts have now approved that as well. We are currently in trading halt this week, and we will be coming out of trading halt next week, next Monday, to be a fully U.S. domiciled company listed on the New York Stock Exchange, American Stock Exchange, starting next Monday to commence trading as a fully U.S. redomiciled company. We're ramping up field programs in the meantime, and we're fully funded for our exploration and development programs on both the gold and antimony side as we move forward now into the high season where we have drilling programs and technical studies. So we're coming into a big season for news flow to follow here for the rest of the year. Alaska, such a safe mining jurisdiction, preferred jurisdiction on some of these ranking schemes like the Fraser Institute. Really, there's our project's all on state land, so there's no federal and native title land to contend with. That means a much more streamlined permitting process, and we're fully permitted for exploration, and we're just seeing a lot of just expedited permitting. We're already experiencing that. I recall that on day one, this current administration released an executive order, which was literally titled Unleashing Alaska's Extraordinary Mineral Resource Potential. And this is what it looks like, projects like Estelle, and we're already seeing the benefits of that. The project itself, so quite a large project, over 200 square mile claim block here in Alaska, where we have over 20 prospects at various stages of advancement, but we've been really focused on Corbel and RPM for the gold, and then Stibium and Styx prospects for the antimony. On the antimony side, Stibium and Styx, we see massive stibnite veining on the surface there with surface sampling results up to 60% antimony. And this is what we're focused on for the $43 million Department of War award to bring that domestic production back, to start extracting material from these prospects, as well as drill to establish a resource for longer-term sustained production and longer-term planning. And then that's for phase one. And in phase two, we'd be looking beyond 2026 and 2027, we'd be looking to scale things up by expanding the mining operations and building a much larger refinery. The key prospects there, Styx and Stibium. I mean, really the thing to focus on this slide is the photos. You can see that on the left-hand side with Styx, you can see us just already extracting ore. We see that the guys there are working on a massive stibnite vein just sticking out of the surface. And so we've already collected about 50 tons of material, just hand manually collecting that last year. And now, of course, with the Department of War funding, we've now bought mining equipment. So we're going to mechanize that and really scale things up this year as part of the the Department of War program to commence antimony production. There's a photo of myself and Senator Murkowski sitting in front of our antimony stockpile down at our base camp. And then on the right-hand side, you can see some of those pictures of the veining, the big veins there at Stibium, and also now in a drill rig there. So we have commenced drilling at Stibium Prospect as we move forward here to eventually establish a resource. But we'll be producing antimony well before we even establish a resource for that longer-term planning, just because it's right there on the surface and we can extract it now. A key part of the project is the Port McKenzie site, where we'll be doing all our downstream processing. And this is where, so we'll be extracting the ore on our site and then sending it to Port McKenzie to further crush it and concentrate it, and then refine it into the initial product of military-grade antimony trisulfide. That's what phase one is all about. And here at Port McKenzie, deep water port, we're situated between a rail bed and the road. We got the power line running right next to our property, where we've secured 42 acres, which will easily facilitate this phase one project refinery, and then it's large enough to expand then into a phase two. This is a really key location, centrally located, and the larger vision there is to establish an antimony refining hub in U.S. hands that not only our project feeds into, but across the region, across the state, and indeed across the world that can feed into here. And really, it's not just antimony. As we move forward, really a critical minerals refining hub. And Port McKenzie is such a key part of that, with logistical redundancy and a central location. So on the flow sheet, we've been developing that with a lot of metallurgical test work. And what we're looking at is mining, of course, at the site, and then early concentration on the site using ore sorting, XR density ore sorting to be exact, to produce a coarse concentrate. So the material will still be between 3 to 5 inches in size. And we'll be separating that into two products: a high-grade gold, low-grade stockpile, or a high-grade gold, low-grade antimony stockpile, which we'll just store on site that has value to us, and then a high-grade antimony, low-grade gold stockpile, which we will then ship to Port McKenzie for the downstream processing. And there we will mill and potentially gravity separate, but certainly flotation to produce a concentrate, running between 40 to 60%. And then we are leaning towards, and really have decided to move towards, a hydrometallurgical process where we'll be leaching this material, getting it into solution. And then once it's in solution, the first priority, of course, is to produce the military-grade antimony trisulfide. But because we're using the hydrometallurgical process, it's not too far of a stretch shortly thereafter to then put on a circuit for antimony trioxide and antimony metal, for some of these other refined antimony products off the same plant. So 80% of that plant is the same, that early processing, and then the refining we can put on different circuits. But of course, with phase one, with the Department of War funding, the project priority is to produce military-grade antimony trisulfide. So that's the first cab off the rank. The project well on schedule, ahead of schedule actually. We're just about to complete our design and engineering of our processing plants. Most of that is complete. We're just looking at the refining process now, that hydrometallurgical step to produce the military-grade antimony trisulfide. We'll establish some type of a mineral resource by the end of the year, hopefully, because we have a drilling program happening this year, and so we will establish that. But that does not stop us from actually starting to extract material. And with the Department of War funding, we've now purchased over 90% of the actual mining and processing equipment, which has been delivered or is on the way now to be delivered this summer. And so this summer will be very active for us in terms of commencing the mining here shortly in the coming weeks, and then the construction period starts over the next few months. And by later this year, we will be looking to commission parts of that plant to be targeting eventual production of military-grade antimony trisulfide by late 2026 or early next year. We want to be successful at that, because then we have the potential to move to phase two, where we scale things up and are and apply for much larger DOW funding for phase two. So the grand vision here is really, when I speak about phase two, is to have a critical mineral, antimony and critical minerals refining hub. And this lays it out We'll be mining on the site or doing that early ore sorting concentration at the site. We can mine it at 5% out of the deposits using machines, excavators, and these type of machines. Then our ore sorting, our test work is showing a 3 to 5 time upgrade. So we will be producing a 15 to 20% product at the site, then take it to Port McKenzie for all the downstream processing there. And being at Port McKenzie, this is really the gateway for Alaska Minerals to reach market, and it's being developed as a commodity port. And so projects from across the state and around the region can feed into this central refinery that we can then export to the U.S. and our allies and to the markets. And being at the port location there and lots of different logistics options, that's very feasible. So that's the grand vision that we're working on with the Department of War to establish, with our project at the center of it, but of course the wider region resources to feed into that. On the gold side, we are, of course, a gold company as well. Now, to point out, the antimony project is running on because they're in separate prospects, it's a standalone parallel path. Separate to that are our gold projects. And here, currently, we're working on a feasibility study, doing all the studies and the drilling that's involved, the metallurgical test work, the environmental studies to come out with some type of feasibility. Very, very soon. It's kind of an iterative process. The more drilling, the more studies you do, you follow those leads and make it as robust as possible. And we're attempting now with our drilling programs to infill and get as many resources as we can into reserves, into the reserves for this upcoming feasibility study. And that involves RPM project here. And of course, at RPM, we have a number of zones we've been working on, RPM North, Valley, and South. And if we zoom into those, here's some typical drill intercepts. You can see, one I always like to point out is RPM 005, 400 meters at 3.5 grams per ton, including 132 meters at 10 grams per ton. And it goes on and on. I could go on and on here, but that's very typical, particularly of that RPM North zone. That will be where we start. That'll be the phase 1 pit there, RPM North, where that yellow outline shaded area is, and then we'll expand into the wider deposit. So this is really the jewel in the crown for any mining scenario that will be coming forward in our upcoming feasibility study. And then there's lots of upside around RPM, of course, and we've done a lot of surface sampling, and you can see here along this ridge line, there's a number of anomalies that are drill-ready targets here along there, and the idea and the model there is to intersect additional RPM North bonanza zones. They're genetically linked and very similar geology and geophysical signatures we're seeing there. So we're hoping to drill some of those this year. And then also out in the valley, you can see that grid spacing. What we have is like a valley fill. So it's all eroded off of the RPM North zone, filling in this valley, this material. We have a 1 gram per ton, 1.6 kilometer long anomaly there. Which is about 50 to 70 meters thick of fill in the material, all crushed up, ready to dig. And so we just need to get in there and drill. And we know it's on the surface, and some really nice 2 gram per ton targets there as well. And we just need to drill it to depth and get some volume to that. And that's a big resource upside there in that valley fill material. So we continue to advance that as well. And then further is the Corbel deposit bulk tonnage system. That's that yellow outline there, that's the Corbel main deposit. And here it is a bulk tonnage lower grade system, 2.5 kilometer strike lengths. It's just a massive deposit, lower grade type system. But there's a higher grade feeder core through there, and you can see from some of these numbers, 101 meters at 1.3 grams per ton, 94 meters at a gram. Very typical of that high grade feeder core there in the center of Corbel, and just decades and decades of mine life when we include Corbel into the project execution plan. And then further afield, speaking of upside, it is the kind of project where you'll be out here for decades and decades with multiple mining centers producing multiple commodities. Currently we are focused on gold and antimony, but we have additional prospects with not just gold, but multi-element potential, porphyry copper potential with gold, copper, silver, other critical elements. There's a list of about 15 elements there. We've really taken a holistic approach to this project from the very beginning, and we do multi-element analysis, and we're seeing about 15 other elements. And we don't know exactly what it all means yet. But in terms of, it's not as readily available as antimony, which is just on the surface and very visible. We're talking about things like gallium, scandium, yttrium, some of these other critical elements that we're looking to take out of our waste streams and some of these other prospects, and at the gold and Corbel, the RPM and Corbel prospects as well. RPM is very rich in bismuth, for example, very key strategic mineral. Here's our proven flow sheet. Nothing too fancy going on here on the gold side. Conventional off-the-shelf technology. We utilize ore sorting early for some of the lower grade materials. The higher grade, of course, straight to the mill. But we'll be looking to ore sort there, and then we can separate into a high grade fraction that goes off to the mill, and then the lower grade reject material out of the ore sorters go off to the heap leach pad. We do have that option. So heap leach, CIL, and ore sorting, lots of options there to really optimize this project. But then when it comes to the milling, we'll use some flotation, and then we'll regrind down to about 20 microns, get good gold liberation there, very good liberation of the gold. And then we'll be leaching that material, typical CIL, and we're already getting over 96% recovery in our early test work. Now we're honing in with our feasibility studies to really improve those numbers. And then a typical gold extraction plant where we'll be producing doré bars, and that should be quite clean, those doré bars, gold mostly with a little bit of silver, but not much else. So that's really nice. And then here's what I'm talking about with some of these other critical elements. And we're working with the Department of War for additional funding to accomplish this by putting in critical minerals extraction plants on the back end to take out some of these elements from our tailings. So not just sending it off simply to a tailings facility, but sending them through critical minerals extraction plants. And there's a lot of funding out there that we're going for. So, not only is it positive for the bottom line of for the project, but for national security and bringing domestic production back, we're all in on that with our Department of War partners. A timeline, so we just continue our exploration and advancing these projects nonstop over the years to come. And then on the gold side, so on the antimony side, we're looking at phase 1 production of antimony trisulfide by the end of this year or early next year. On the gold side, working on that feasibility study throughout the rest of the year, trying to come out with that by next year. And then we are well advanced with our environmental studies. So then we would be in a position, once that feasibility study is out, to start submitting for permitting, being on state land, much more streamlined permitting. We expect that process to take about 12 to 18 months. We're looking to have everything we're in control of on the technical side. We're looking to have a construction-ready project by 2028. And so just to kind of wrap things up, we have strong dual commodity exposure with gold and antimony. Like I said, right commodities in the right place at the right time. It's really a world-class district scale project. Have many of these left in the world. We've been a first mover in the critical minerals space, and which is why we've been the successful recipient of a Department of War funding. And that really shows confidence in our project, and we will be successful at phase 1, and then look to move to phase 2 with much with additional Department of War funding. Have the potential for that. Being in Alaska, with all the geopolitical risk and sovereign risk in the world today, being here in Alaska in a tier 1 jurisdiction is really a big bonus for the project. We're talking about a long scale, long mine life, large scale project here. Like I said, decades and decades of mine life, and really, again, that strategic alignment and partnership now with the U.S. government. Antimony phase 1 to start, but much bigger things in the works, and our discussions with our U.S. government partners bodes well for the company, and indeed will create value for the investor. So I'll leave it at that and open it up to any questions that people might have. We've got some time left.
Great job, Chris. All right, we do have some questions for you. Let's talk about how sensitive are projected economics to the fluctuating gold prices.
Well, if you look at our previous scoping study, which is a bit dated now, it's over 2 years ago, but we were looking at the project at that stage at an $1,800 gold price, and it was a positive project. And now we're talking about a $4,000 gold price. So, we're definitely in the safe zone here, right? So easily the project is more than our previous scoping study at $1,800 gold, and the numbers there were quite positive. And so you can imagine now at $4,000 gold, we are. So I guess the answer would be, at these levels currently, unless it drops below $2,000 or $1,800, we're in the safe zone, and it's sensitive to the gold price always. All these projects are, but we're still well within the green, in the black.
Great, great. So, how much of the Estelle land package remains effectively unexplored?
Great question. We've only scratched the surface out there. So about 2-3% has actually been explored, and we continue every year, and that's part of our programs this year. We have, old school geologists, boots on the ground every year. I think we got 3 teams mobilized this year, and that includes a mapper and a sampler. And every year, if you watch our news flow and you follow our company, we come out with new discoveries or go to some of these discoveries from the previous year and continue to advance those projects. So already 20 known prospects that we've discovered, and every year we come out with another one or two that it's like a kid in a candy store out there. So we'd only scratched the surface.
And 2 questions. What discovery within Estelle has surprised management the most? And what do you believe the market most misunderstands about the scale potential?
The antimony, the antimony for sure. I mean, we were a gold company, and we still are a gold company. Let's not forget that. We never want to dilute that story. But when we've discovered these massive stibnite veins on the surface, we recognized we were onto something special, and that was years ago, right? That was years ago, and so we recognized the race is on for critical minerals, and so we approached and started discussing that with our government partners, and got the Department of War to do their due diligence and look at our project early on. And here we are as a first mover, and at the center of the effort to bring antimony production back to the United States. So that's been. And now we're looking at not only mining antimony, but also doing a fully vertically integrated supply chain. So mining it and processing it to complete that, to produce that military grade antimony trisulfide initially, but then also metal and antimony trioxide. So we not only a miner now, but we're also a processor, a critical minerals processor. And so that's been the biggest development over the last few years, certainly moving from the gold space into a much larger critical minerals type company.
What about the challenges? What are the biggest remaining engineering challenges?
Yeah, so we're 100 miles from Anchorage in Alaska. A lot of great projects, and so but some of these are quite remote. We're not that remote. We're just 100 miles from Anchorage, and so the infrastructure is always a challenge in Alaska. And so, but we have a number of options here. So, of course, a lot of our project is we have a large airstrip on the project. We support the project year round. We also utilize a winter road, very common in this part of the world. But now we have the West Susitna Access Road project. So that project is already in the Department of Transportation STIP, as they call it. So it's been budgeted and planned, and they're breaking ground on that this year. And so ultimately, to develop the gold project, we're going to need that West Susitna Access Road. But that's all on state land as well. And you can see with the permitting expediting, we're already seeing that up north. The Ambler roads the permitting has been approved. And so there's access and then power. But we have a number of power options on the table. The gas pipeline is back gaining momentum, the AK LNG project in Alaska, and certainly with everything that's happening in Hormuz and down in the Gulf states, there's an extra push. And we just had the Alaska Energy Conference, the governor's annual conference last month, where a lot of the Asian countries showed up ready to buy, ready to support, and that development of the AK LNG that we can then build a spur line off of is an option. Also, the coal project that is only 20 miles from us, they just recently received their own Department of War Energy of $90 million to complete their feasibility study. So we need that kind of base load power. So everything in the region for the regional development and energy sources have gained support, and everything's gaining momentum. It's an exciting time to be in Alaska. And I think we can overcome those challenges.
I bet it is. And with all of that said, what development milestone do you believe will create the most shareholder value over the next 12 months?
Becoming an antimony producer. So once we're producing the military grade antimony trisulfide later this year, early next year, that takes us to the next level. So that'll take us from being an explorer developer currently to an actual producer, revenue generating producers. So that's a huge catalyst. And then we'll continue to grow that antimony project on that side. And then, of course, this year, in the shorter term, the drilling results coming out this year, where we continue to focus mainly on RPM to prove that resources up, and some exciting extensions there, and then a mineral resource update to follow that, hopefully before the end of the year, if we get all the assays in. So big catalysts on that, and then that'll then, of course, culminate into our feasibility study, which we're hoping to get out at some point next year.
Perfect. Well, Chris, what do you want investors to leave with today? What's the takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, markets are tough right now. It can be a bloodbath out there, but I think if you take a closer look at Nova Minerals and all the things that we've discussed today, it really is. It's been a first mover, and we're on the path to production. We got cash flow on our sites, revenue here in the near term, and so that really takes us from just being another exploration company to being a producer on the antimony and some of these other exciting things happening on the critical mineral space. And then there's the district scale of what we're doing with the gold. We're not just a one-hit wonder. It's a district scale play. I mean, major companies were built on projects like this, like the Carlin Trend in Nevada, where Newmont and Barrick were built. This is the type of project we're talking about. So go to our website, everything we discussed today, and check it out, dig a bit deeper, and I think you'll find we're onto something quite special here.
Perfect. Great job, Chris. Thank you for informing us about Nova Minerals. We look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
All right, everyone. We'll be right back.